I will ignore that member's lack of decorum and his emotionally charged approach to focus on Canadians, because I can actually take it.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Before you watch this video, we highly recommend that you watch our previous video regarding the impromptu speech the speaker delivered during question period, as much of this video references that highly unusual event.
If you've watched that video, just know that the Conservatives intend to pay close attention to the remarks of Greg Fergus and act accordingly. Let's take a look.
After 8 long years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and especially in Quebec, where the inflation rate has hit 4.8%, higher than elsewhere in Canada. After 8 years of inflationary deficits, the solution proposed by the Liberals and the Bloc is to significantly increase costs through a tax on gas and diesel that will increase the cost of every product that's transported. Will they put an end to these inflationary policies so that Quebecers can buy food and gas and housing? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have no lessons to take from the Conservatives. What the Conservatives are proposing for the Canadians listening to us is to cut services, cut investments, and cut the future of Canada. We have a plan to help Canadians prosper in the 21st century economy. And what Canadians are realizing is that the Conservatives are too dangerous for our country. Thank you.
So, right off the bat, Pierre asks a relatively benign question, rooted in facts. The Chihuahua gets up and starts barking, seemingly in violation of everything that Greg Fergus just spent 20 minutes talking about. And Fergus says nothing.
Of course, because he's a Liberal.
And Pierre sitting there, you can see him pointing over at Champagne saying, "So what was that?"
But this is the thing. This was the whole point of Fergus's speech. And go back and watch our other video. We explain it a bit more in detail, but the whole point was to neuter the Conservative Party because they're so far ahead in the polls. And if you notice how Champagne responded to that question, he was responding to it as if he was, on the campaign trail giving a speech.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, I will ignore that member's lack of decorum and his emotionally charged approach to focus on Canadians. Because I can actually take it. I can take the debate and have it out in the open. Mr. Speaker, you talked about cuts. Canadians are making cuts in their own lives. We now have a new phenomenon in Canada, which is the middle class homeless. We used to just have young people living in their parents' basements. Now we have parents moving into their children's basements. Will the Prime Minister reverse the inflationary policies that doubled housing costs and are forcing seniors to move into their kids' basements just to avoid going homeless?
Great dig at Fergus there, because, as he said, Champagne was acting in a severe lack of decorum there. And also a dig at the Liberals for basically being a bunch of snowflakes and not being able to take actual serious and hard debates and answer the hard questions.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable colleague for the question. Canada has a AAA credit rating, the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and low unemployment. And in addition, we will always be there to support the middle class, Mr. Speaker, whether it is 6 million old age seniors with the old age security benefit, whether it is 11 million Canadians with the grocery rebate, whether it is 4 million Canadians with the business supports. Mr. Speaker, what we do on this side of the House is invest in Canadians to build a stronger economy day after day, year after year, and we will continue on that course. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You can't live inside a AAA credit rating. You can't eat a AAA credit rating. Nobody cares about your AAA credit rating.
This is just insulting at this point. Like, can you imagine? I don't have to imagine. Never mind that. I don't have to imagine because I know there's people that are on this channel that are having to do this, that are having to make choices between going homeless and eating, and going homeless and living with their kids. It is so insulting.
Well, and furthermore, this government is so proud of their grocery rebate. Oh, we helped 11 million Canadians with the grocery rebate. What that means is that 11 million Canadians are so financially strapped that they need a grocery rebate to get by. And that I'm sure there's a lot more Canadians who didn't receive that rebate but need it because you guys have driven up the cost of food with your crazy carbon tax.
Remember how you used to get that birthday card from that aunt or uncle and it had $20 in it and it felt like a decent amount of money, but it was gone inside of an hour? Yeah, that's what the grocery rebate was. So you gave Canadians the equivalent of $20 to spend at the grocery store, and that's it. Gone. Nothing else. The grocery rebate isn't a recurring thing. It was a one-time garbage low payment that did nothing to help them. Don't even start, Anita.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Incompetent rating agencies mean absolutely nothing to the, quote, unhoused seniors who say that for affordable housing in Metro Vancouver, that the only thing that turns up is nothing, nothing, and nothing. Nor does it mean anything to, and I quote again, this is even from the CBC, living in his broken down car, homeless man says he has until Thursday to move. We have both nurses and carpenters living in parking lots after 8 years of this Prime Minister doubling housing costs. Will they stop driving up the cost of living so that Canadians can house, feed, and heat their families?
The Honourable Minister.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and here's the truth for seniors. Fixing the global inflation problem is not going to be fixed by cutting dental support to 3.5 million seniors, and that's what the Leader of the Opposition would do. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, to get to the tens of billions of dollars of cuts he's talking about, it would mean cuts to our healthcare system. It would mean making sure, unfortunately, that the investments like we saw in BC to transform our health system won't happen. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? It doesn't mean just poor health outcomes. It means more costs in the future. It means a less resilient country, and it means a much worse future for our seniors. That's what he's peddling, Mr. Speaker.
Really, Holland? Really?
Again, he's fear-mongering, and it's like they're on the campaign trail, where he's not saying what the Liberals are going to do or how they're going to fix it, or he's not even answering the question. He's just saying, oh, the Conservatives are going to cut. Listen to that. They're going to cut. This is this crap that Fergus was allegedly talking about, but because it's his buddies doing it, he's not calling them out.
And this is what we said the other day. They're on the campaign trail. They're speaking as if an election is coming. This is now obvious, okay? So he's talking about this stuff like, A, how do you even know what Pierre's going to cut? And B, you guys beat your chest and jump up and down and cheer when inflation goes down a month because you're saying you're fixing it.
And you're not. These programs that we cannot afford, unfortunately, are driving inflation up.
The first thing that they're going to cut is all of the billions of dollars that they've given to all of these municipalities to quote unquote speed up housing. And then they're going to cut this stupid housing accelerator that does absolutely nothing. So right there, that's over $35 billion. That's almost as much as the deficit actually is in this budget. They're only about $5 billion away. So to balance the budget, it's actually not that hard, Liberals. It's not that hard.
It's hard if you're fiscally irresponsible.
And then what I would do is I would then go after that 30% increase in the government workforce and get rid of that. That's billions of dollars a year as well. So there's a lot of easy stuff for the Conservatives to cut before they actually get to all of your extra spending benefits like the dental program. So, nice try there, Holland.
The The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually, this government that's promising over $10 billion of cuts right now because they suddenly woke up and realized that they were bankrupt. When we were in office, we actually managed to balance the budget while growing healthcare spending every single year. In fact, growing it faster than the current government. But today, the biggest threat to the health of Canadians is homelessness. People are losing their homes because this Prime Minister has doubled the cost of housing. Will he realize, with people living in parking lots, that after 8 years, he's just not worth the cost?
Great rebuttal. Like, because he's right. The government issued a mandate that they have to trim $15 billion from their budget over the next 2 years. Why would they do that? Maybe it's because, they're spending too much money.
And that's what's driving up inflation. We're going to hear very soon whether or not the Bank of Canada is putting interest rates up again.
Yeah, and if they do, that spells a whole heap of trouble for everyone that's on a variable mortgage and everyone that is on a fixed-term mortgage that is maturing within the next couple of months.
We discussed in a recent video that Canadians are spending 60% of their wages on housing. That's astronomical. Usually if you go to a lender, it's 30%. So it's double what they recommend because we are in such a housing crisis in this country. If it goes up even more, people are going to start losing their homes in droves.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the party opposite
side of
the House, we don't balance budgets on the backs of Canadians. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we invest in Canadians. Let me give you one example, Mr. Speaker. Lifting almost 500,000 children out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit. And every single time there's an opportunity to support Canadians, Mr. Speaker, what does the other side of the House do? They vote against. That is not the way in which we will build a strong economy.
Once again, I'd like to remind members to please conduct themselves in a way that is appropriate. And I'll also ask members to please keep the voices down so the speaker can hear at least what is going on. If not, the members would ask a question. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member is right about one thing. They don't balance the budget on the backs of Canadians. They run massive inflationary deficits on the backs of Canadians. On another matter, Mr. Speaker, our hearts were broken to see a hospital in Gaza struck by a missile. Disinformation peddled by Hamas and regurgitated by CBC was then amplified by the Prime Minister. Does he agree with President Biden that the offending missile originated with terrorists in Gaza?
So that was a great rebuttal to Anita. Yeah, we don't balance the budget on the backs of Canadians. Well, right.
Because you don't balance it at all.
You don't balance it at all.
Our lives are way better under Stephen Harper.
And housing cost half as much. And that was a balanced budget.
And groceries cost half as much. And gas cost half as much. Life cost half as much. I mean, I was saying to Cypher the other day, you know, when we were younger, we used to just go for a drive. It was just like a thing. We'd pack our little boy in the car and we'd go for a drive. And we can't do that anymore. And it was just something so simple. But we can't do that anymore and we miss it, you know?
There's so many things that we just don't do. Because we can't afford it. Nobody can afford it. Affordability is a huge problem in Canada. How do we know that? Because everyone is flocking to the Conservatives. Because they are talking about how to address it. And what they're saying is not pie in the sky. It's not fake news. It's not disinformation. It's fact. Everything is grounded in fact. So as long as Pierre keeps to that, affordability will improve. Interest rates will come down. You'll be able to afford a home again.
Well, and his shadow finance minister actually knows what he's doing. I mean, the man built a business from the ground up. He came here with nothing and built a business and learned himself instead of Freeland, who was just tossed the job.
The honourable member from Dufferin Caledon.
The Prime Minister promised that interest rates were going to remain low, and Canadians believed him, so they went out, they bought homes, and they took out mortgages. But after 8 years of liberal inflationary deficits, interest rates are at a 30-year high, and many Canadian families are now not finding they can't pay their mortgage. In fact, the Business Council of Canada just said governments can't permanently run deficits without fear. So will this finance minister stop running her inflationary deficits so interest rates will come down and Canadian families won't lose their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, and of course, allow me to correct the record. There are actually 400,000 families in Alberta collecting the Canada Child Benefit checks, Mr. Speaker. Those checks are coming out this week. And Mr. Speaker, under what the Conservatives are proposing, they would have those checks completely removed. They would be cutting those supports for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I will remind you that while we continue to support Canadians, we are also running the lowest deficit here in Canada among all G7 countries.
We're running the lowest deficit, even though we're one of the smallest countries. But you know, that's okay because we're still borrowing money.
Canada's not one of the smallest countries in the G7. Canada is the smallest country by population in the G7. Canada's the blue line at the bottom.
We're still killing ourselves. We're just not killing ourselves as fast as the rest of the countries. Like, what kind of an argument is that? Oh, it's a liberal one.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one cut that we're going to make. We're going to cut about 80 members from that side of the House when we form a common sense conservative government. And when we do that, we will address the concerns like the ship worker in Vancouver who's paying $7,500 a month for a mortgage. Wow. And what do they say? They talk about a AAA credit rating. How out of touch. They're gaslighting Canadians. Will they cut these inflationary deficits and get interest rates under control? Yes or no?
Well done, Mr. Seaback. That was beautiful.
Absolutely. Wow.
Incredible.
Wow. He's had has some pretty good statements before, but that one tops them all. Tops them all. And, you know, after a day of question period and lecturing by Fergus like this, I don't think I want to hear any more of what the Liberals have to say. So we'll leave it at that, ladies and gentlemen. And God, what a day.